Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our event on Israel's missile defense engagements over the past year, especially 9 months, and especially since the events of October 7. So to talk about these issues, we are delighted to welcome back Moshe Patel, director of the Israeli Missile Defense Organization, or IMDO. He's well known to everybody in the missile defense world. The IMDO is, of course, part of the Directorate of Defense Research and Development, and is in charge of all of the development, management, and improvement of Israel's active missile defense systems. So welcome back to CSIS.
Thank you very much.
We're going to have a conversation, the two of us, but really encourage folks to submit questions online through the event page, and they'll come to me where I can direct them to Moshe. You were here just over a year ago in May 2023, and we spoke about all the programs and all the research and development and the operational testing and the like. And we don't want to redo that. I think we want to do something a little bit different today, talking about, well, a lot's happened in the past 9 months. And so hopefully we can, you can tell the story of what has happened, especially since October 7, and what the IMDO, what the IDF has been doing, maybe some of the lessons that we can take away from that. Before we kind of get to all the missile stuff, of course, we want to acknowledge all the folks that were killed in the terrorist attack on October 7 and those still held hostage. So over to you, Moshe.
Thank you very much, Tom, for the opportunity to be here again. I'm very excited and flattered. Before we start, let me first of all mention we still have 120 hostages. This is why I'm wearing this yellow ribbon. Among them, elder people, young people, women that we wish to bring them home as soon as possible. This is one thing. Second, we would like to, we are in memory of all the civilians that have been butchered, have been killed, have been raped, beheaded on October the 7th. And we are, with the families, praying for the families. We are praying for the brave soldiers of Israel that fall in the war, from the beginning of the war until today. We are praying for all the wounded people that are still in hospitals, that they will, come back home safely as soon as possible. And also, we are thinking about more than 250,000 of Israeli citizens that were evacuated from their home, either from the north or from the south, and wishing to go back home and to still continue and live in peace. And of course, we need to make sure that something like that won't happen again. So this is something that I wish. And of course, after that, we can start to talk about all the missile defense activity.
Of course.
So Tom, in my view, in the perspective of the missile defense, I have some dates, historic dates, to remember. Of course, one is the October the 7th, when we have a massive attack on Israel, and all of our architecture worked very, very good. On the first day, of course, David Sling and Iron Dome were the main systems that have been working, and the first time with so extensive capability and operational successes. The next date, important date, was October 31st. In October 31st, for the first time ever, the Arrow 2 weapon system intercept a ballistic missile that came from Iran operationally. Until then, we conducted a lot of flight tests, even here in the States, in Point Mugu, and a lot of tests in Israel. But this was the first time that the Arrow weapon system actually intercepted a ballistic missile operationally. The next important date is November 9th, which was the first Arrow 3 operational interception of a Houthi missile again. It was, as far as we understand, it was the first out-of-space, exoatmospheric kind of operational interception of a ballistic missile. And of course, after all the investments that we received so generously from the US, more than 35 years, and of course, all what we together, invest to see that the system is working. And we were very, very happy about that. The next important day, and this is something that, of course, I'm sure that we will dig into a lot during this interview, is April 13 from U.S. point of view, or April 14, from our point of view. Anyhow, it's on the night between 13 and 14, which we have a massive attack from Iran the first time. 120 ballistic missiles were headed Israel with warheads of half a ton or a ton, together with another 220 almost cruise missiles and UAVs. Everything was synchronized in order to hit Israel population synchronized, and all the proxies that were part of the celebration from the south, from the north. So on that specific night, we had more than 550 articles that actually flown into Israel. And of course, all of our system worked together. We were connecting to our allies, US allies, and our US allies were connected to other nations, the coalitions that support this war, this day actually. And what I can say, and maybe this is something that we can discuss more deeply, whatever we simulated, tested along so many years, proven itself during this night. Of course, we learned a lot, and we build a huge confidence about our capability and our system, and the fact that we are connected and working together with specifically our US allies.
Great. Lots to go through there. Let's I think, start with October 7. I remember we exchanged emails that day, and you said this is the Israeli 9/11. It took me a while, I think, to appreciate that. There was a lot of well-planned activity on the ground, in the air. How would you characterize the place of various rocket or short-range missiles within the events of October 7 and I guess the days that follow? What was the relative place in that combined arms attack?
First of all, our system were fully deployed and ready for this attack. Again, we were satisfied, of course, about the capability of the system and that they were prepared, but other parts were not working well. I'm sure that everybody knows that. Again, even with this kind of attack, we were ready and we were well deployed. What we face is scenarios that we simulated and tested along a lot of flight tests. And, you know, we have also previous wars and confrontations that we actually demonstrate the ability of our systems. So this was part of what we, at least the air and missile defense array was ready. And the percentage of interceptions and the success was very, very high. So with that, at least we had comfort on that day, that with all what was happening, that thousands of lives have been saved. For us, it was very, very important.
Let me ask the question from the perspective of Hamas. How do you think they were using the rocket attacks and such to shape what was going on the ground?
First of all, I'm sure that they know that once they are launching those attacks, our populations are going into shelters and they will less, you know, be ready for the ground attack, for the air attack, with gliders and all of that. So this was part of their planning. A lot of lessons have been learned from this day. And I can assure you that it won't happen again in Israel. I mean, we learned the lesson, and we fix what need to be fixed, and something like that won't happen again.
And what's the that won't happen again? What you're talking about?
That we will be better ready, we will be better prepared, that we will give our population, our civilian people that are close to the border enough security and defense capabilities beside the air and missile defense array that we are giving them anyhow. So this is the lesson learned that we learn, and I'm sure that we are in the middle of the huge debrief of all what was happening in October the 7th. A lot of lessons have been learned, and a lot of lessons will be learned.
And in the days that followed, I guess still staying in the October timeframe, Do you think, were you anticipating that this would be primarily a ground operation? How were you thinking about, from your perspective at IMDO, how were you anticipating what the near-term future might look like?
First of all, once we had this huge, massive attack, there were no choice, and the Prime Minister of Israel declared that we were in a war immediately on October the 7th. With that, I can tell you that at least our organization worked very closely with the Israeli Air Force, our brave operators and soldiers, to deploy wherever it need to be deployed, to give priorities wherever need to have priorities, to do all the modifications that need to be done. I can tell you that we have ongoing debriefing, and we are approving our systems along the way and along the activity. As you say, we, until now, I mean, our array is ready and approve itself from day to day. And we were part of all what was going on. Of course, we anticipated that the Hezbollah will also join the party, and our systems are deployed there and also play a major role in the defense of the north of Israel as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned October 31st with,
Yes.
with the Arrow 2. I think it probably had been used before, but perhaps not against the ballistic missile. Any takeaways? It's an older system, of course, but any takeaways from that engagement, for instance?
First of all, I can tell you that, Iron Dome, that it is being very, extensive operational use along the years. The operators are very trained well, and, for them it was easy. With the aero weapon system, until October 31st, they, do a lot of training, a lot of simulations. And IMDO, when we are preparing ourselves for flight test or for simulation, you know exactly what are the scenarios, and and of course we were very glad that let's call it, with the surprise attack from the north, from the Houthis, we didn't anticipate that it will join the war. We have nothing to do with the Houthis or with Yemen or whatever. And again, they joined the party as part of the Iranian proxies. We were very glad that the system, without any additional preparation, was ready and intercept. And we are talking about interceptor, that it is more than 20 years,
Right.
waiting for this event. And more than that, it's opportunity to say thanks to all my predecessors, and especially Dr. Uzi Rubin, that was the visionary of the missile defense organization, the missile defense activity, that, together with David Ivry at that time, and a lot of people in IAI, and that have the vision, and to join the President Reagan initiative back in the 86, 87, and to build the system to be ready exactly for this moment. So, of course, we were very glad that it was a success, and again, it's something that we were not surprised that it was a success, but at least we were very confident that all what was done until then was ready for this.
Well, sort of staying in the October timeframe, October-November timeframe, the saying goes that in a crisis, the American president always asks, where's the carriers? But it seems like the second question has become, where are the Aegis destroyers, or where are the Patriots? And a lot of that began steaming to the Red Sea shortly after October 7. Could you talk about, in that time frame, cooperation, information sharing between yourself and the United States, for instance, that was perhaps helpful to some of this, at least indications of warning, launch warning, things like that?
We have extensive dialogue specifically with the Missile Defense Agency. We have also with the Army, with the Navy, with the Marine Corps, but specifically with the Missile Defense Agency. that, from day one are working with us shoulder to shoulder. They're not just sending the money and that's it. And we are managing the program together. I can tell you that the first conference call that I conducted on October the 7th, it was Saturday, I just called my colleague in the Missile Defense Agency and update her and her team immediately of what was happening and what we're expecting, what are even the lessons learned from the first day and what we are planning for the future. And almost every day until today, we are doing the debriefs together and understand what can be done better. Of course, with US system participation and the information sharing in real time and offline are essential to this kind of success. And we are trying to improve ourselves along the, and of course, April 13 demonstrate this capability a lot. So
yeah. And in terms of we've had, for instance, Admiral Pyle from the U.S. Navy come over and talk about operations in the Red Sea and all the many historic firsts that the United States has had, SM-3, SM-6, lots of engagements in the past 9 months. And I've heard you emphasize, and you just now talked about, we've been doing these simulations, we've been doing these exercises, this was real. And it has been real. And not that you haven't been shooting down lots of stuff with Iron Dome and David Sling over the years, but this is on a different scale. And I think I've pointed out that just about every U.S. missile defense system has been operationally used in the past 2 years, all the way up to THAAD, from CSIS to THAAD, for instance. So your takeaways then, as you move in the past 9 months from that past era to this heavy engagement period, you've emphasized the utility of the modeling and simulations and exercises. Anything that surprised you? Things that perhaps you've needed to adapt to contend with moving from theory to reality, as you've said?
First of all, when you're doing your flight test, you are limited. You cannot do a flight test that can emulate whatever was done in April 13. But the simulation tools are essential in order to make you ready. And whatever we conducted internally in Israel, and together with a lot of joint exercises and joint simulation activities, we have ground testing simulation activities. We have like Juniper Cobra, that are exercises that U.S. forces are being deployed in Israel. We demonstrate the ability to work together. We have our battle lab, test beds, that we are connecting them. And so I can tell you that, after, on April 14, when I debriefed my colleagues in MDA, I showed them the slides that actually represent what was happening. And I told them, listen, it's an exercise. I took it from an exercise that we conducted a few weeks ago, and they were laughing, and it was very similar. I can tell you that we are having simulation much heavy and condensed compared to what happened. The simulation really played a major role. But, and I need to have caution on that, there are some surprises of your weapon system, sometimes with your communication, and that the real life actually teaching you, and you need to adapt. So my recommendation to the whole community, do a lot of simulation, whatever need to be done. Don't afraid that, maybe during your simulation, your system maybe won't react the best way. You learn from that. You need to be prepared 200% in order to be ready for the 100%. The second thing is to be ready for surprises. And the fact that with Iron Dome, with David Sling, with Arrow, my organization, the Israeli Missile Defense Organization, under the Directorate of DDR&D, which part of the Ministry of Defense, that are working shoulder to shoulder with the operators, with the industries, to learn what was going on, even with a success interception, and to make it better for the next time. It's very important. The closed loop, to do very fast adaptations, it's very, very important. So this is my recommendation to the whole community. try to be flexible and adapt according to what is going on.
I think that's a very interesting comment, because I think the scorecard of flight test intercepts, for instance, is sometimes used to say, well, the effectiveness of the system is X% on the basis of these big flight tests, things like that. But you're really underscoring the simulations as an essential part of the test enterprise. I appreciate that. The other thing that you emphasized there, Aero 3. Was it November 9, November 11?
November 9th.
November 9th.
The first operational exoatmospheric ballistic in the world, as far as we know.
Right. Well, there again, anything that that surprised you? Yes, there's always sort of some things that you didn't anticipate, but this, of course, coming at a much higher altitude than the others. Takeaways from that engagement, for instance.
I can tell you, we tested the Aero 3 in Alaska. It was, we conducted 3 consecutive flight tests here, and we conducted it with US systems. I didn't bring any radar here to Alaska. I used the wonderful ANTPY2 that you have and the US C2BMC in order to make the detection and helping. And we gained a lot from this flight test. I can tell you that on November 9th, and of course, on April 13, what was actually tested and simulated along the years was very, very helpful in order to have a success there. And again, I can tell you more than that. Even from the wonderful successes of Alaska flight testing, we learn a lot. Even with huge success of interception, you see a difference here and a difference there, and you want to understand it better, because whatever you are doing, in your simulation, in your wind tunnels, in your all the test devices that you have, the real physics, the real life, give you another point, another area to make it better, to shape it better. And but I can tell you that we didn't have any major surprise at all. This is for sure.
And of course, the reason you're doing these tests at Point Mugu or in Alaska is you need space.
Of course.
You can't be firing off these ballistic missiles in your particular neighborhood. You need to spread things out. Well, let's go to April 14. As you may recall, we were going to have you here the week of maybe April 16 or something like that, and I got a call and said, I don't think I'm going to be able to come, Tom. In the days before that, there was a lot of buzz, right? There was buzz in here in Washington. Everybody seemed to know that Iran was going to do something. How would you characterize telling your story in the days prior? What was going on, and what were you thinking about and doing and hearing?
What we were doing is to prepare our operators much better. We have excellent dialogues with our US partners of what needs to be done. We shape again the training, the simulations, and I can tell you that each shift of our systems train itself for different kind of scenarios in order to be prepared well. And we make sure that everything is working according to the plan. And this is it. I mean, it's not that we made any kind of revolution, because all of our systems are operational. And this is what's beautiful about it. You don't need to start from beginning because there was some feeling that something will happen. But to shape the operators, to shape the systems, to make sure that everything is working, to make sure that the logistic chain will work correctly. So those are the things that we were concentrating during the war and even now.
Yeah. And so the indications and warning, the intelligence sharing contributed to that. The cooperation that you've emphasized so many times with partners and allies, other folks in the region, the United States. Could you comment perhaps on how it's gone in the shift from working with EUCOM versus CENTCOM, for instance?
First of all, I can tell you that the shift conducted in parallel. I mean, we conducted a lot of exercises with CENTCOM and EUCOM. So the transit between EUCOM to CENTCOM was very, very smooth. And I can tell you that, we are, for many, many years, we are building the highway of interoperability between our forces. And of course, we train it and we exercise it. And as a matter of fact, I just came back from Huntsville, Alabama. We had a debrief meeting with all the operators, CENTCOM, MDA, Israeli Air Force, all of our industries, of course, the Ministry of Defense, my organization, to do a debriefing of what was happening on April 13. And it was a wonderful openness of sharing the information, how to be better, how to improve ourselves, even with the success. And we're talking about, very, very high success during this day. I can tell you that one thing also was happening is that from a kind of a ballistic missile defense architecture, we moved to air and missile defense architecture, and CENTCOM were leading that. And the success of the air and missile defense architecture helped a lot. Again, we are not talking only about our ground missile defense capability. We're talking also about, according to all what was published, that a lot of airplanes were involved, and the information sharing was very, very important, and contributed to the success. And, everything was headed by the United States, and we felt that it is not just, giving us generous support with budget and money, helping us to develop our system. It is when we need you, you are there to support us. And this is something, we have, we have the capability by our own, and we are independent, but the fact that you were there together with the coalition that actually you gathered was very important.
Great. All right, so that was kind of the advanced preparation. How would you describe how the attack on April 13, 14 played out? It was a synchronized attack, all these different types of delivery systems synchronized in terms of time and space. How do you characterize that attack playing out?
From the Iranian point of view, it was planned excellent. I mean, they synchronized the attack of the ballistic missiles together with the UAVs, together with the cruise missiles, in order to, of course, overload our systems. Their proxies, in the north, in the south, were part of this celebration as well. With that, I'm glad that, that we have our capability and our architecture in order to be ready. And as I mentioned, things like that are being, trained and simulated, even worse scenario than this. And we were ready with all of our systems, and of course with the coalition and the support from your systems as well. And there was also, here we are talking about the success of, the Israeli architecture, the Iron Dome, David's Sling, Aero 2, Aero 3. There were other systems other US systems that are involved and participate successfully. And I'm not going to elaborate more than that, but we are very glad that also USB MD systems successfully participated and helped to intercept part of the attack.
And U.S. officials have talked about those, so you don't have to. You've used the phrase, Houthis joining the party, Hezbollah joining the party, but this was missile defense Appaloosa here. I mean, notwithstanding the Russians' very best efforts in Ukraine the last couple of years, this has to be, the biggest, from a numbers perspective, engagements. And there was a lot of engagements. You just emphasized a moment ago the heavy importance of the air defense piece of that.
Yes.
Lots of UAVs, hundreds of them. Tell me why you emphasize that so much. Is that you've been focused, IMDO has been focused on the ballistic missile sides of this thing. But you put a point of emphasis on that, and it would seem to be where the threat is. And how do you see perhaps the need to adapt on that front?
First of all, what we saw, and what we saw, by the way, what we saw in Ukraine as well, that we're talking about combination of ballistic and airborne targets. By the way, we anticipated it in the past, and this is why we adapt in our systems, in the, of course, Iron Dome and David Sling system, the capability to counter those kind of threats. And we even approve our communication, first of all, inside Israel and with our communication to US systems to have much better capability against those kind of airborne targets. So this also was part of the simulation. And I mentioned when actually, CENTCOM adapted us, we emphasized during our exercise with them the airborne parts, of course, together with the ballistic picture.
The hand gliders, however, wasn't so much on folks' radar. I think this might be a good time to ask a question from Jacob Rousseau, the defense attaché from the Danish embassy. And he asks, could you comment on Israeli considerations of how your air defense systems can get better and also handle the cost challenge of all these ubiquitous UAS systems? I'm paraphrasing slightly there.
First of all, I can tell you that we are trying to expedite the process of the production and to lower the prices of our systems. I can tell you that all the time we have the expression that you need to counter, or you need to take into account what is the price if you don't have a defense, and compared to the price of the system and the price of again, once you counter those kind of threats and you succeeded, you save, first of all, a lot of lives, you save a lot of property damage, and the fact that in April 14 the stock exchange in Israel continued to work, and the people went to work on that day, with all the expenses that we had until that day, I think that they were worth it. So this is how we are looking at it.
And you corrected the number, sort of 330 some objects. It's commonly been used, but you emphasize, no, it's more like 550, I think, when you include everything from Hezbollah and the like. So what has the IDF said about the engagement rates of this 550 some set of objects? How many were successfully engaged?
What I can tell you that we are talking about high number of success. Again, I don't want to get into the exact details. There was some declaration by the spokesman of the Defense Forces, but we are talking about very, very limited leaks that didn't cause so much damage. So it was a huge success. Yeah.
And but a big number of those were air threats, yes. UAS and cruise missiles, and they kind of blend together a bit. So on that front, here's a question from Tony Osborne of Aviation Week, and he says there was a considerable number of coalition aircraft able to engage dozens of drones outside Israeli airspace during that raid. If the airspace in Jordan or elsewhere had not been available, do you think that the missile defense array would have had the same level of success? So in other words, what's the significance of being able to engage so many of these things forward and early?
First of all, of course, there was a huge advantage of the capability to engage far away and early enough. We have, even without connecting to any system, just looking at our system by themselves, we are standing behind what we are obligating to our Israeli Air Force with the performance of the system. And of course, here we're talking about much higher numbers than what we are obligated, and this is, of course, because of the coalition and the capability that we had as a help for our system.
And without getting into names of countries, is it fair to say that there's a number of different folks who contributed to that result?
Yes, of course, added by the US, and of course we are very, very thankful. Most of them have almost the same enemies and the same interests. So CENTCOM was leading that, and of course we were very happy.
Now, this is perhaps a question of intent or perhaps a little bit of a speculation, but I know for a while there had been a kind of discussion, well, I mean, the success was so dramatic that there was speculation, I would say here in the United States, that, oh, well, maybe Iran didn't really intend for these 550 things to get through. Maybe they just wanted to have a show of force, and knowing full well that Israeli air defenses and everybody else would clean it up. What do you think about that?
First of all, it's their call, what their expectation or not. But we will be ready if their intent or not intent. We are ready, and we will be ready in the future.
Gotcha. Another aspect of this was, and you began to talk about it, the interoperability between some other number of countries and the United States. On April 13, April 14, what did you see in terms of the interoperability and whether it's between U.S. and Israeli missile defense systems or components or otherwise?
Let me start with some of history, if I may. You know, when Uzi Rubin signed the first aero-deployability program, he mentioned, you know, the Americans asked me to put interoperability capability in our system. I don't know what is interoperability, what they want from me. Of course, I needed the money. I signed the contract. Please support. I was a lieutenant colonel at that time. You know, I was sent to Hanscom Air Force Base to learn the Link 16 and to learn the capability. And since then, you know, all of our systems have the Link 16 capability and the communication capability and the interface that is needed. And we demonstrated in a lot of flight tests, a lot of exercise, a lot of simulation, even in Alaska. I mean, you know, since we didn't bring any radar, we've had full engagement remote with US systems. I can tell you that all what we learn, all what we gain, all what we pave the way for the operators show itself on April 13 in a very, very high level of good communication. And I mentioned that we had a debriefing last week in Huntsville, Alabama, with all the participants, and it was very, very interesting to see the openness from all the US systems that were part of the activity, and the sharing of information and the lesson learned, how we saw the US systems, how the US systems saw us, how everything is orchestrated together. It was, for me, an historic event to conduct such a meeting. Of course, everyone went out. And, of course, we have a lesson learned, we have an action item. We will improve ourselves. But I think it's like a huge battle lab that was conducted in 20 minutes of attack.
Well, I want to pull the thread on that because you just said, yeah, we were kind of frustrated with this interoperability thing, but you made us do it. And as it turned out, it was pretty useful. There's a number of other U.S. partners and allies that perhaps chafe a little bit at that from time to time. Tell me how it made you better. How did the interoperability and the closeness and the ability to share information, how did it make you better and more effective on that attack?
First of all, I'm sure that you know that in each of our new blocks or new capability, we are going over a huge certification by the US authorities, the GTIC, that goes over anything to see that everything's supposed to orchestrate well. The sharing of information, the fact that you you have common sky picture, and everybody see without need to do the talking, the same picture, and to have full integrated coordination. So I'm saying to you, please help me with this kind of threat, or please support me. If somebody asks, support me, or somebody will say, listen, I'm going to take care of it. Don't send any interceptor. Those kind of discussions that are being done, first of all, you know, by the means, the communication means, and of course by verbal coordination as well, was essential to be more efficient. You are more efficient with your detection systems, with your interceptors, much better.
Yeah, and given the fact that many of these things were slow moving, perhaps it gave more time for a lot of that. The number of ballistic missiles from Iran was relatively, in the scheme of things, relatively small. Would you imagine that if it had been more heavily fast-moving threats as opposed to slow-moving threats, that the verbal communication might be stressed more?
And yes, but this is why the algorithms and the structure of the interoperability is built so good that, that first of all, the system can do the recommendation, and the operators can see and approve whatever need to be approved, or to intervene wherever need to be intervened. And I can tell you that in a lot of cases, the operators really intervene and change the recommendation from the system for the good for better success of the system.
So I think this is an important takeaway here, is that it's the interoperability, the closeness of that, would you say is a fair ingredient of the degree of success that you had?
Of course.
Okay, sure. Good.
Of course. And you know, talking about interoperability, our internal systems are also interoperable between themselves, because we have different systems that we need to do full coordination between themselves, even without talking about external systems that are being part of the architecture.
Right. So a couple months ago, the U.S. passed the supplemental bill, and it had a substantial amount of aid for, especially for the missile defense procurement and also modernization, including some directed energy stuff, specifically for Israel. How post, this has been in the works for a long time. Since October 7, it finally got passed. Are there any reactions from the April 13-14 attack that are going to shape, do you think, your path on future modernization, other than interoperability? Other insights on the modernization path forward from that event?
First of all, we are not, we are not standing and saying, okay, April 13 was, and that's it. We can rest. We are continuing to improve our systems. We are continuing to expedite the process of production, expedite the production capability. And we did it we are doing it from the beginning of war, and we are continuing to do that. And of course, with the US support that we supposed to receive, it will help us a lot. I can tell you that we receive also from the Minister of Defense generous budget in order to start all the replenishment that need to be done. And, you know, beside the fact, we signed 2 contracts, by the way, during the war. Part of them were during the war, with one with Germany with Arrow 3, the second with Finland with the David Sling weapon system. So I can tell you that at least the direction that I receive is do whatever you need to be done to do for the defense of Israel, but continue to fulfill whatever you are obligated to Germany and Finland. And this is what we are doing with the huge efforts from the industries that are part of these efforts to have, to fulfill whatever is needed for those countries and, of course, the need of Israel.
And that's an interesting comment. I mean, a lot of interceptors were expended in the past 9 months. In April, a lot was expended by the United States. That is a massive capacity problem, an inventory problem. And yet what you just said there is we're still going to be pushing the FMS. Or the Israel's sales to these other countries, which is interesting. Like just a couple weeks ago, the White House announced that the U.S. would be pausing all FMS of Patriot and NASAMS to everybody, except for Ukraine and maybe a couple other folks, because of capacity problems. As you think about that, hearing what you just said about Finland and Germany. Do we need anybody that's in the missile defense business to move to an inventory kind of approach as opposed to only building things when the contract is signed? I mean, those are the kind of capacity issues that everybody has to be thinking about now.
First of all, I can tell you that we are lucky enough that besides the Israeli industries, we have wonderful U.S. industries that support us with the production of all of our systems, Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow. And also, whatever we are going to deploy to Finland and Germany will be in U.S.-Israeli production. So we are receiving a huge support from U.S. industries there. And I can tell you that we are receiving also support from the Missile Defense Agency in giving the priorities that are needed. First of all, for the defense of Israel, this is the top priority, and support us with all the licensing that are needed for Israel and for third-party sales. By the way, I'm not sure that everybody knows, but part of the agreements that we have and the contracts that we have with Finland and Germany, I contract MDA back with the FMS case to support me with the production that we need for Finland and Germany, because we are talking about a lot of US subcontractors that are involved, and they are supporting me with the licensing and all of that. So it's a kind of, they're not part of the obligation to those countries, but they support me, and in cases that they are joining our meetings, and it looks like, at least from the point of view of what we need, we receive the priorities that we need.
So in terms of U.S. industries that you just highlighted there, like what would you highlight in terms of ways of cooperation? There's some co-production, for instance, is going on in Arkansas, for instance, of Skyhunter. What would you highlight in terms of cooperation with U.S. industry specifically?
First of all, when talking about Iron Dome, until now, we were like co-produced the Iron Dome interceptor. That like 55 or 60% of the components are being produced here in the States. We are now moving, and I think that this was one of the topics that we discussed in my previous interview with you. We are moving into approach in Camden to have a kind of facility to have all-around capability of Iron Dome. So this will be very, very supportive for us that a full Iron Dome interceptor can be produced here in the States, together with all the co-production that we are doing. With David Sling and Arrow 3, again, 50% of the components also are being produced here in the States with US companies. And we are trying to extend it as much as we can, because we feel that it will be very, very supportive to support our industries to expedite the process of production.
Given all of the context in which this has happened, a lot has happened on the political side. Things have gone up and down, sideways in the past 9 months. How would you characterize kind of the many political pressures, positive or negative, that is affecting perhaps your missile defense piece of the pie?
I'm working with the missile defense almost 30 years. On those 30 years, there were a lot of changing in the politics here in the States and in Israel. For first time, I didn't find any political pressure either way, from this side of the ocean or the other side of the ocean, that prevent this beautiful kind of cooperation. The strong relationships that we have with the Missile Defense Agency and the support that we receive from the Congress, bipartisan support, and the fact that everybody understands the need to support these missile defense efforts is something that I can tell you, I don't feel any whatsoever kind of effect, let's call it this way.
Well, are there any particular messages that you want to communicate to, say, a U.S. audience, a broader U.S. audience, in terms of our partnership?
First of all, I think that U.S. government or U.S. systems are also benefit from this kind of cooperation, because all the common lessons learned are being, first of all, shared and hopefully make your system, U.S. systems, much, much better. So this is something I want to emphasize. I can tell you that without the huge support that we received from you for more than 35 years, we were not where we are. So it's again another opportunity to say thank you very much for all the support. And the support, as I mentioned, is not just sending the money; it's also be part of the development, part of the efforts to help shape our system much better. You know, in Israel, we are doing it in a more, let's call it, more shortcuts way, and trying to, you know, to make the bureaucracy less. Here, you have more procedures way. I think that the fusion between those two cultures make the product much, much better. And I hope that we can contribute to you with this kind of advantages that we have. And I think that that's it. I think that the lesson learned from, you know, what happened during the war and the preparations, and to be much better, how we can be much better is something that, of course, will be continue to be shared. Yeah, and we are very, very glad to have, let's call it family like you. Okay, it's not just friends, it's family.
Well, I'd like to ask folks kind of what sources of kind of intellectual framework that have shaped them over the years. Is there something that you would recommend, for instance, that people read, or something that has shaped your thinking over the years?
I think that a lot of people in the 80s didn't believe in the missile defense capability, the fact that a bullet can hit a bullet. I suggest to read, and there are a lot of books. I know that I mentioned again Uzi Rubin, he published a book like that as well.
3 times this.
Yes, but there are a lot of books that there to understand what was the processes, what was, I mean, how there were a lot of people that were against investing so much money on missile defense from the beginning, and I think it's good to see what was the controversy at that time compared to what we are knowing now. I think that we can learn a lot.
All right. Well, just go read some histories of that vision. When it, again, as you say, there was a lot of skeptics. Well, hey, good shooting. There's been, as you say, operationally realistic testing of just about every system we've got now in the past couple of years. So thank you, Moshe, and thanks for coming back, and kudos on the successes. So
thank you.
Please join me in thanking Moshe Patel.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you.